Hey guys, this is Dartimos with Dartimos Dominions, and we are here with a new style of series where we look at each nation one by one, and we're going to go over it as a group and kind of get a group consensus over this because I'm pretty sure that we all have different opinions on all nations, and the first one that we picked for today was EA Pan because they are such a diverse nation, and along with me, I have three helpers. Gazlov, say hi.
How's it going?
RCK, how are you doing, dude?
Good, good.
And Toolbox, you're the one who gave us this suggestion. How are you doing, dude?
Howdy.
Now, Gazlov, you would probably classify Pangea as one of the best nations in EA. Is that correct?
They're up there. They're definitely a top tier nation.
And what is it that makes them? Is it their research, their mages, or their unit core?
I think it's their sacreds that everybody fears. They're really, really good at expanding and snowballing.
So what do you mean by what makes them such a good unit?
Well, they have really decent defense, good hit points, okay protection, but they just kill really well. I'm not entirely sure why, just looking at them. I think they have to have a decent bless, and every Pangea I've played against tends to. They tend to always have blood surge at a minimum and possibly defense skill and maybe something to help with the protection.
RCK, what do you have you played against or as have you played as EA Pan before?
I've only ever played as MA Pan. I've never played as EA Pan.
Do these guys they're about the same, right? I can't remember.
I believe so. I believe they had the same berserk. I think everything is the same on them.
I think that this berserk is how they get their protection up as by the way, Geslov. Geslov, when you do the with the vans, what's their protection and their berserk level?
Well, with the van here, their protection is, I want to say, 13, and their berserk is 5, and so when it goes off, they get a protection of 16.
Okay, so these guys get up to 12. Now, Toolbox, did you when you did this, did you put a heavy bless on these guys?
Yes.
How much would you do would you do a bless that would cut heavily into your scales, or just a heavy bless by doing something imprisoned?
Depends on the size of the map, and if it's a blitz game, people would go helpless, and that's perfectly understandable.
Okay. It's really interesting when you move into blitzes how things kind of change, where you might actually take that hell bless. Let's move into their research. What did you use as your researchers?
Oh, as the researchers, they're absolutely terrible. They're 120 golds each, and you get 7 research.
So you research with these guys right here, then, correct?
Well, yeah. Otherwise, you'd have to research it with pans, and if you look at pans, they take 2 turns to make. And look at the upkeep on them.
That's insane.
There you go. Yeah. So you can't. I mean, you would have pans as researchers, but you can't have a lot of pans as researchers for those reasons. And when there are other nations in EA that has one path mages that are also sacred, but you can't compete with nations with those kind of mages. It's just not fair.
Yeah, I absolutely love these cross paths. Like, you either get one water or one nature. They're absolutely, like, I don't want to say they're absolutely useless, because I do know of a use for these guys, but they're
Exactly.
not they're not very useful as researchers. Oh no, I need to quickly send them out to individually cast spells.
Exactly.
Guess
But
oh, sorry, keep going, sorry.
but they are excellent raiders, and if you are in a situation where you have to use them in a war, they are very useful in raiding and such and such. Like they are actually very useful for for, for raiding, and they can hold their own on themselves, especially the earth ones. If you can get iron skin and temple flesh on them, and you can get the protection really high. They're really good light raiders as it is, even, and for 120 gold, that's definitely worth it.
These guys are amazing at killing super combatants, by the way. They have the ability to, their defense is a little bit high enough, and they've got a lot of anti big guy, like you can get your defense really high. So if they don't have a high enough attack, if they're going something with like a brand, it might not be able to go through earth magic. In addition, you can get these guys with your cold aura, and you can actually fatigue out some super combatants if they don't have their cold up and going. Also, you get swiftness or quickness with a GSS, and you wreck face. Nothing's better than a two-handed GSS, attacking twice. So that's what we used these for when I played as EA Pan. Gazlov, defense-wise, 17 defense. Is that elf level of defense?
It is. It's not quite as good as the 19 defense of, say, Hell Hurtings and Vans from MA, but it's pretty good. A lot of stuff is going to have trouble hitting that.
So RCK, is there any what are we looking at magic wise? What is the magic of Pangea EA?
Mostly nature. The going back on your researcher is what I was
Okay.
thinking about. So usually when when someone takes Pangea in the game, that's already going to lock out Mother Oak for anybody else who wants it. And going down the enchantment to level 5, what you get along the way, I believe, at enchantment level 4 is Swarm. Am I right on that?
I think it's alteration.
Oh crap!
Yeah.
Or like the
Alteration.
alteration, you get Mother Oak. That's what I was thinking. Either way, it's a nature 1 spell for 1 gem, and 75% of either of those centaur mages that you make are able to cast Swarm, which make them even a better thugging type of researcher. And if you need extra help, I mean, I have seen where mass swarm can definitely kill armies.
Have you ever done the mass swarm strat that you're talking about, RCK?
I have. Because swarm's going to be good against any. Well, I wouldn't say any amount of PD, but a normal amount of PD, like 6 PD. Someone comes in, casts swarm twice, it's going to kill 6 PD. If you have nature 3 mages being your pans, and they're casting, I forget the math for it on how much fatigue it costs to cast Swarm at that point. If you're a level 3 casting a level 1 spell, but you're able to cast it a lot more. And if you have 4 or 5 pans casting God knows how many swarms, that's going to be a lot of bodies on the field, and it's going to be really harassing down the enemy units.
Now, speaking of Swarm, I think we can't talk about Swarm without going into the Dryad, because these are probably the mainstay of Pangea's defense. When you lose your army, lose everything else, you still have your Dryads. We were talking about Shaitan's in the break, how the corruption's kind of this on steroids. Toolbox, what is the seduction ability, and how exactly does it work?
It's a morale check against 9, and correct me if I'm wrong. And I think you can only take male gender units. And correct me if I'm wrong on that as well. So go if there's an army camping on your capital, or if you are in an enemy controlled province, and if there is a commander there, then there's a chance that Dryad can seduce one of them if you set Dryad to seduce. And if the dice roll is with you, then you get to take the commander and move to a neighboring province. But if the dice roll god isn't with you, then you have to fight them. Or if you roll exactly the same, then nothing happens. But so it's an assassin if the dice roll doesn't go well, or you get to keep a free mage if the dice roll god is with you. So that's how it works. So you win both ways essentially. If you want to get rid of someone, then you either kill them or you either take them. So
Kaslov, in the grand scheme of things, seductions seem like they are very annoying and they're very, very tilting for a player. But do you think that this is a mechanic that is broken?
It's pretty awful, and it becomes very awful when you're trying to siege a Pangean fort, and they made these guys researchers, and so they have like 20 of these things in their fort, and they have plenty of nature gems. These guys will assassinate every commander you have. They really will, because they'll just swarm assassinate them.
It's really
And
interesting.
You cannot patrol them out, and you can't patrol them out because you're sieging the fort.
Like you talk about how they could potentially use these guys as researchers. Most guides and most people I talk to say that they use these guys as their researchers. When I played my game, I used pans as researchers. And everybody says, "Oh, well, what about the upkeep?" Well, it didn't matter because they were giving me free spawns. So in a way, I wasn't paying upkeep. I was paying for new troops. I was paying for siege chaff. I was paying for guys that I can get that are that I can throw all my nature buffs on, and then they do the tanking while my white centaurs do the beating up. And so
Well,
it,
the nice thing about dryads is since they're not sacred, you don't have to waste your time making a temple. Oh, they are.
Yeah, they are.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
It might be MA that you're thinking of.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's they still have
Are they? Okay.
they're still the same. I just like to add something to what Gaslov said. Pangean forts are really weak, so they can be sieged down very quickly. Pangaea has to summon their forts if they can only build up the palisades. So palisades have 100 defense, so most armies should be able to crack the fort in a turn essentially. And the summonable forts, if you can pull it out, Didymos, it's they have a fort defense of 250, and they're the only forts that you can build to get 2 commander points. So this is a very nature gem heavy nation because you have to have these forts. Palisades are just don't do the job essentially. Yeah, and with the research mages, well, you have. So the good thing about researching with Pan is that when you get alteration 6, you could transform some of them off with transformation. That will cut a lot of upkeep, and there's a whole topic based on what you get as transformation. It's really complicated, and
I've never transformed anybody since I played. Oh my goodness! Like I was still playing single player, and I think I transformed some random nature mage in like a Yith game. When I mean, it was so long ago. It was a single player game. Gaslov, have you ever transformed mages?
I always transform naiads.
Oh, that's a really good idea. RCK, what about you?
I've never transformed anything.
Now, Toolbox, what is the most interesting transformation that you've ever randomed into?
Eidons. There are a couple of interesting Eidons. They are two-headed ogre with holding a giant club.
Oh my goodness. Do they lose any of their magic ability, or do they keep the same magic
No,
ability?
they keep the magic ability. That's the
Oh my
best part of
goodness.
it.
So it's like Warhammer 2 stuff.
They can get. You can increase, I think, nature magic by transforming.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think I've also transformed those trees. Those are a good one to transform.
Oh right.
It just reminds me of Warcraft 2. I'm with stupid. No, I am. Did you play the Warcraft 2 where you had the two-headed ogres mages?
Yeah, that was a good game.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the ability to transform some of these mages. How often do you use transformation, Toolbox?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. The only downside is that you transform into an animal, and most animals have really low magic resistance, and that is bad thing against an astral nation. Bad thing. So you shouldn't transform the mages that you're gonna take them to a war with, because they get charmed animal and such and such.
Okay.
So there are downsides to it, but you do need to transform some of your mages because the upkeeps for them are absolutely ridiculous.
What is the downside of Pinks? I mean, we looked at this, and I mean, they've got a lot of access to really good magic. They've got really good sacreds. They've got a strong early game. Nature scales into the mid game. RCK, what do you see as some of the downsides of Pan?
Just looking at it from the start, I wouldn't say they have much magic diversity. They have very high nature. They have cross paths into water and earth. But other than that, that's really all you see.
Is it to such an extent that you would take a pretender to cover all of those missing paths?
Depends on what I was going for. Because also, when you're looking at their troops, all their troops really lack protection. And then being in nature, you have really good protection spells, being like mass protection, mass regeneration, things like that. But at the same time, that opens you up to fire-based spells. Other than that, I do think you have blood access on your pans, but it's only blood 1, so it would take a long time to really get yourself in. Well, I guess you do have a chance to get blood 2 and earth 2, so it's not too bad.
When I played, I randomed into the nature 5, and which is very rare, 3% shot, and I think I even randomed into the blood 3, which is incredibly rare. That's a 1.5% chance. So yeah, the game that I played. It was kind of fun because I didn't take a pretender that could take Mother Oak. Now, speaking of doing with the what would you have to do to get this guy to how do you get a pan to cast Mother Oak?
Just make a Thistle Mace, go to Nature 5, and there you go.
Thistle Mace is construction 2 or 4?
4, I believe.
Okay, so you'd have to, if you want to, you either need to take a Nature 5 pretender, you'd need to random into a Nature 5, or you need to go to construction 4.
Yep.
Okay. Gazlov, how important is Mother Oak to Pangea?
Oh, as Toolbox mentioned, it's very important. They're a very nature, gym hungry nation. Their forts need it. I don't know. You're definitely gonna be casting a lot of swarm with them, and then eventually you're gonna be casting the better swarm. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh yes,
Creeping Doom.
Creeping Doom.
Creeping Doom.
It's alteration 7.
It turns from 20 to 70.
Yeah.
it's really interesting because what I think to me, Pan is one of the best created nations in Dominion because it allows so much diversity of choice. And the stuff that you're saying, I didn't use a whole lot of Swarm. I used Swarm, but it was by far not what I prioritized. I used super combatants, or I'm sorry, I used thugs. I used who are the naked girls?
Manads or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, the main ads. I used an insane amount of main ads. I mean, it was nuts how my pan game was so different than somebody else's pan game, but I don't necessarily think that one was better or worse. Um, Speaking of that, and I want you to look at this nation and Gatsop, I think you're up on this one because I'm kind of curious your thought on the Centaur Warrior and the Centauride Warrior. How good is this as a unit?
It's very good. That's an incredibly good unit because it's high defense, it's stealthy, it berserks, and it's 35 gold.
Yeah.
It's cheap. It's cheap for what you're getting.
If we got rid of the white centaurs, do you think that Pan is still a viable nation?
Absolutely. I think these guys can substitute for your white centaurs.
And the Centaurides actually have a higher defense, but they do not have the Berserk. Would you pick these ones, or would you pick the ones with the Berserk?
No, I would still go with the berserking ones. You'd be surprised how many battles you win just because your guys won't route.
Have you played as EA Pan?
I haven't. I've only played against them.
What's interesting is I think that this would be a nation that you would do very well with. I'm actually kind of interested to see if you played as these guys. RCK, with these guys, with these revelers down here, have you ever played against a pan that has used any of the Satyr units?
Honestly, I've never played as anyone that ever used it because what we didn't talk about earlier when you have the pans is that they free spawn Menads. So meaning you have all the chaff that you want if you're making those guys. And then as far as your heavy hitters go, you're going to have your white centaurs and then any thugs you want to put in there. Because I believe while we were playing in the game, a way that Nosy was playing Pangea was he was having his commanders being those white centaurs up there. He just had them with like thugging kit or anti-thug kits, either having
Yeah.
social sharpness and the rest of that. And it's just really to kill other thugs or other things he came across that his white centaurs and menads couldn't kill.
Yeah, at some point I need to do a showcase with we had to fight against a great mother, and it's one of the nastiest chassis that I can think of, and we wrecked her face with these guys. It was nuts. Toolbox, are you using these ones when you're playing in your pan game?
Yeah, all of them. So if you go back to the unit screen, so I make revelers and satyr sneaks a lot.
Why?
That's
Okay, that's really
mainly
cool. Because why do you do this?
so revelers you need a fort, but satyr sneaks you can make them from your forest. So when you want to knock someone down really quickly, you can actually make those, and you could raid people with it. And they're very effective at taking down PDs because they're sneaky and they can recuperate, and they have very low resource and recruitment requirements, so you can mess them up very quickly from a forest.
Why would you go with these satyrs at all, which have a javelin?
Yeah, I think I make satyrs mainly because I don't know when the war's gonna happen, and I don't want to have unrest. But there are times I make either or. It really doesn't matter. They cost the same amount to go. They have a different resource requirement, and resource requirement isn't really the issue. It's the recruitment point requirement because forest provinces usually have low population.
Sure.
So I make those a lot mainly because I don't want to use the forts to. I don't want to use any. I don't use my capital to make any of these guys because they're used to make white centaurs and white centaurs only most of the time.
Uh, RCK, would you call Pangea a cap-centric nation?
More so. Well, fans are recruit anywhere, aren't they?
Pans, every one of their mages is. The funny thing is
Recruit
that the
anywhere.
only thing that is recruited in their capital is the white centaur. But I've heard Pan being a cap-centric nation. Do you think that this is true, or where's your thoughts on that?
I do feel that way, mainly because one of their biggest strengths is how fast they can come out the gates with their white centaurs when it comes to the early game. And I feel like that's what puts them really far ahead. I mean, if you're not able to make a, I don't know, they just have really good expansions in the beginning. But say it's turn 12 and you have 9 provinces. I mean, is that really good Pangea if you decide to go with a
No.
different strategy, you know? But if you went with white centaurs, you could have had 20 provinces, you know? But it really depends. Because I mean, you can't not recruit white centaurs at this point in the game, especially early on.
Okay, so I want to hit 3 different areas, which is the early game, the mid game, and the late game. And I'm curious as to how strong you guys think that it is, and if it needs to be boosted, or how a pretender can help out with each area. So let's go early game with the expansion, and so expansion, and how much do you need to use your pretender to boost expansion? Getha, what do you think about it?
Not at all. In fact, with Pan, I don't know if they have access to a researcher pretender, but I think you're either going to want your pretender to give you scales and a bless, or you're going to want him to research. You definitely do not need a pretender to expand with as Pangea.
Now, how about a bless? Do you need a solid bless in order to get farther with this?
Well, considering you have so many good thugs and you have a very decent sacred chassis, it's not a bad idea to have a good bless. I mean, and that's what I typically see players do with Pangea is take a really strong bless.
Now, would you take something like a hell bless for this?
I wouldn't take a hell bless because your research is so bad. And you're going to need a large quantity of mages, which means you need a lot of gold.
What of note when you say that, what's interesting is that elves usually have the ability to make the air quills, whereas Pan does not have that ability. They have no native air. Are there any of the research items that they can use?
No, they can't make natively. They can't make any of the research items.
No,
Well,
they're like
they
the
can
worst
make the
researchers
imps.
ever.
I was gonna say very technically they get to the imps. RCK mid game. How are these guys at taking their first target? Their first for a first war target, and then as a first war as the player themselves. What do you think as the as a target? Is Pan a good target to attack for your first war?
No, because I feel like they're almost strongest in the very beginning of the game. You said mid game. I was like, they probably already killed somebody by the early game, let alone by the mid game if it's their first war. Um, Normally, you'd probably see a Pangea going after somebody as soon as expansion finished. I mean, there's probably no waiting around because that's when they're the strongest. Once people start coming out with more evocation spells or battlefield spells and really using commanders and not just their troops in battles, that's when things are going to start turning the other end on Pangea. And I think that's when they have to start using their assassins. But other than that, I mean, I feel like they have a very strong early game and very strong first war.
Toolbox, who would you be looking for as a pan player to attack? Are there any traits that would make a nation a better target?
Well, on a first war, or I guess in any war, you don't want you want to take as least amount of attrition as possible and win the war, right? So you want to attack a nation that doesn't have a strong sacred, can easily win without you taking very minimum losses. So if there's a nation like that, bam, you're gone. Really, you're either they're gone or I'm gone, because as a pan, you have to take someone out very quickly because they have really, really, really bad research, and the troops aren't cheap either. The troops are pretty lackluster. They don't have very good armor, so you know you have to pay that with money, I guess. That's that's the best way to put it.
Gazlov,
I
is
feel,
there a? I'm sorry. Go ahead, RCK.
I was going to say, I feel like most of Pangea's early games targets are going to be nations that obviously don't do well in the early game, have really bad starts, or have very low protection troops that they can just chop up. Um, that
Yeah, I think you
said,
hit
I mean,
a big point, because one thing we didn't hit on is their 25 gold, 34 flying movement scout that can be recruited in any forest. And this is a good way to kind of find your first target. And I kind of like your idea where you look for the person that expanded the worst, because they probably are down on troops because they face planted.
and it's going to be nice whenever you take that 300 gold a turn capital from somebody, even if they didn't have a lot of provinces. That gold is really going to help you go or push yourself into the mid game.
Now, speaking of the gold, I think of greater note would be the nature gems toolbox. How much would you prioritize a capital that has nature gems over an easier target?
Easier target.
Easier
I mean,
target.
you
Okay,
can get more, you can get more.
you can always get more nature
Yeah,
gems.
you can always get more gems.
Um,
Having
Also,
extra money is so important.
what's it? RCA, what were you saying?
also in the beginning, you kind of want to prioritize getting forests. Just if that person just so happen to have forests, that makes it even better for you.
Now,
Oh
guess
yes.
what's it? Good.
I just like to add something there. Is the first fort is always going to be your Grove Fortress fort, and and you'd have to get a forest before like turn 8 or something like that, so you have a fort up and running. Um,
Gazlov, let's say that you are going to be the target of Pan. You've either heard through diplomacy or something to that extent. How do you deal with this with a Pan attacking you?
Well, so they're going to be a raider nation, and what you're going to want to do is get on the offense as well as you can. Don't worry about the land they're taking. You need to get on their forts. They're going to take attrition eventually, but you got to get on the offense against Pangea.
I like that point. Now, related to that, is there any blessed toll? Because I like this idea of some nations you have to pay the toll, and like Niflheim, you more than likely need to take some sort of cold resist on your bless. Is there a toll that you have to pay if there's a Pangea in the game? Yes, no.
Well, the nice thing about Pangea is it's very easy to team up against them. A lot of players are well aware of Pangea. Pangea, because it expands so well, will have a lot of neighbors, and so it's easy to find a partner against them, and that's really useful because it makes it harder for Pangea to effectively raid and conquer you, because it becomes harder for them to stay on the offensive. And so,
Oh,
yeah, when it comes to Pangea, you probably just have to diplo your way to victory.
RCK, we were talking about the Foul Vapors cast, and this dude with a Thistle Mace, or I think the Dryad Mother right out of the box is can cast Foul Vapors. Is this a Foul Vapors nation?
I mean, you can make it one. I mean, just having, because I'm sure you want maybe a little bit of nature on your pretender, or I don't know. Well, I don't know. Disregard that last statement. Um, you're going to be making thistle maces and other things anyway, since you have such an easy access into it. I mean, just putting a little bit of nature on pretender and adding a poison resistance to it. And even if you don't want to add poison resistance, if because most of your army isn't going to be sacreds anyway, since you're so high in nature, there's a lot of poison resistant nature spells that you can cast, which would be pretty easy in alteration. That I think is alteration or enchantment that you're going down anyway. So,
Yeah, see, I want to comment on that because what you're asking Pangea to do is, in addition to having Alteration 7, which is something they want to get, they need to get Enchantment 7. And that is really hard with their poor research to achieve.
I absolutely agree.
And so I
So
would say they are not a Foul Vapors nation, practically. It's not practical for them to be a Foul Vapors nation.
I'm actually just fine with it. I think that getting up to Enchantment 7 or Alteration 7 by mid-game is not overly difficult. And you want to get to Alteration 5, and you either have the choice of Mass Protection or going with, like you said, with the Serpent's Blessing.
well, you could also go with a poison ward.
With where's Poison Ward at? I'm sorry. Oh,
level
right here.
4.
that's cool.
Yeah, it's area effect 15. It's okay. It's going to cost you some gems, but
I guess
don't know.
that's the last question that we can hit on. Toolbox, what are your research priorities as Pan?
Alteration 5, full stop.
Okay, and then what after
Mother
that?
Mother Earth is too important for it. If you haven't rolled a Nature 5, then you need to take Construction 4 or get a Thistle Mace from some nice neighbor. Other than that, you also need Conjuration. If you click Conjuration, then there's the Summon Earth power, and that's fairly important on your pans as well. So level 3 Conjuration is fairly important. Then Foul Vapor is important, but most of the time people have poison resistance because you have a choice between HP of 1 or getting a 5 poison resistant. And most people opt for poison resistance if there's a Pan or Theodorus or any of those nations lying around in your game.
Yeah, how important is? I'm sorry, keep going, dude.
No, it's cool. That's really about it. And Alteration 7, like I said, is very important for Creeping Doom and the mass production.
How important is Howl?
Yeah, I was going to say Conjuration 5 is definitely something you want as Pangea. Howl is great because it distracts enemy mages. It distracts things like skeletons that get summoned. It's a decent counter actually to Skelly spam. I mean, it's not a great counter, but it's something. Let's see. Let's go down. Let's see. I don't know if you need to go past that though. Can we see what other spells are on Conjuration?
Conjuration 5 is the are the elementals. Oh, Conjuration 7?
Yeah, let's see what else.
I don't think there's anything
you don't need any of that. You don't need Ivy Kings.
Living Castles are kind of nice.
Yeah, if you become a Seaborn Pangea, I suppose.
But I think these are level 2 forts, correct? Oh, but you can't get your troops underneath water. Okay, yeah, never mind. I'm yeah, not enough sleep. Okay, okay, so nothing else really beyond that. But I think we can all agree, Conjuration 5.
Actually, so you do want fairies as Pangea because that's going to be your air access.
Oh, that's correct.
Ooh, I didn't think
So you
about that.
probably do want Conjuration 8 as Pangea.
Oh, geez.
You probably do want that Lamia Queen as well. So you could get more death mages You need to find a way to diversify somehow, because Earth and nature doesn't cut it. Really, you need something else as well.
What's interesting is that you could do a foul vapors. If you got death on this nation, you could do something like a rigor mortis because you can get up relief so easily. You have a ton of troops that give you a lot of time, and you could do a foul vapors. You could do a foul vapors like go to sleep method of fighting. It would be very risky, but you know it's there. And also your white
Rigor
centaurs.
mortis.
Yeah,
So like on your contender?
I
I
mean,
don't know. I don't know. It's going to be really hard to get up to death 4. I think as Pangea.
I
You
think that
have
what
to get her on your pretender.
yeah, you got to play with it to get to death 4. But I did it in my playthrough. I got to death 4. I played rigor mortis, darkness. Darkness is beautiful on these guys because you normally take some sort of I mean, doing like you might have some nature on your rainbow, and you can take what is it like night vision pretty easily. Like 1 point into night vision gives you darkness 50, and that's normally enough that these guys can survive. So yeah. Just there's a whole bunch of different options with the diversity, but I think that we want to talk about, okay, so Conjuration 5 is almost necessity, right?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
Alteration
important.
5.
Oh, it's more important.
Okay, Evocation.
I think you went Alt 7 as Pangea for sure.
I think you're
Yeah.
right. I think that Alt
Because
7,
that gives you, because at 6 you get a Frozen Heart, which is invaluable. It's a great spell. And then at 7 you have Mass Protection, which for those the free spawn is pretty phenomenal.
yes. And then Construction 4, so you can get Thistle Maces, right? In basic anti-thug gear. And then enchantment up to 5 or 7 as well, right? And I think we covered everything.
Is Fairy Trod enchantment?
What's that, right?
Is Fairy Trod enchantment or Thaumaturg? That's the one where you can teleport your armies through forest.
Fairy Trod is
Might be Thaumaturg.
Is it Thaumaturg?
Because that's a pretty good spell for Pangea as well.
Yeah, the other one that I really liked that I used to great effect was Beckoning. Beckoning was actually really good. I know that you need to do a difficult MR check or a difficult morale check, which you need to if you pass either of those, you're safe. But it's 50 different targets plus 5 per additional getting above 5 is not easy, but it's if it's a ritual, so you can just booster the crap out of it, and you end up getting like 60 different targets. And if you can manage to get a commander or two, it's absolutely worth it. And also I think you might be able to even put Pendir on this. I killed like 2 or 3 ogres or cyclops using this spell. Especially if their capital is a forest, you cast this on their cap, and it's absolutely devastating. Because even 1 or 2 mages is worth the 20 nature gems. So, kind of interesting.
Yeah, 20. I mean, that's casting that every turn on somebody would be punishing.
Especially in their capital, if it ended up being a forest, that'd be bad.
Okay, guys, I think that we hit all of the major parts except for the pretenders, and we're going to do that in the next episode. So, Gazlov, thank you for joining up with us.
No problem.
RCK, thank you again.
No problem.
Toolbox, thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.